Hi, folks. Welcome to Esports Roundtable Part 3. My name is Shana Kessler. I'm at Central Washington University. I'm the Intramural Sports and Special Events Coordinator, and I will be one of your facilitators for today, along with my companion, Justin.
Hey, y'all, I'm Justin Furlough. I am the Sport Programs Coordinator, primarily for sport clubs at the University of South Carolina. Nice to be back with everyone.
So go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're from. And if you have any questions that you want to see addressed today, our agenda is pretty loose. We only had a handful of submissions for questions to talk about. So we want to make sure that the conversation is steered by what you need to talk about. We also want to be cognizant of the environment that we're in and that we may be talking about violent video games, sensitive issues, first-person shooter, and if at any point in any time anyone needs to recuse themselves, don't be afraid to do so. We know that it's a tense time. Justin and I are very aware of that, and we want to be sensitive to all parties about how we talk about esports going forward. So we'll wait a minute or two, see if a couple more folks are joining us. Looks like some people are still getting connected. All right, well, so for some context for you all, esports is new for me. I started working with esports with in-person tournaments at Central Washington this year, and then we did our excuse me, our launch of our virtual esports program right before the pandemic started. So we were preparing to launch our digital esports offerings as part of our spring programming, along with continued in-person tournaments. Obviously, with the shutdown, we were not able to offer those in-person pieces anymore. But we effectively built our esports program from the ground up with help from our students who are gamers, our intramural sports staff who actively game and are involved with things like Twitch and Discord and play pretty involved in the gaming community already. They've been one of our biggest assets at Central to build this program. Justin, on the other hand, comes from a much more experienced background as a gamer himself. And both of us have been involved with Rec Without Borders. So those of you may have heard that there's National College Trivia Night every Wednesday. It's how I learned how to use Twitch and Discord and was able to bring that to our campus as well. So it's been a great asset to be able to provide additional programming at the national level.
And to echo off that, I know that most of my experience comes from just being a gamer myself. Full transparency, I haven't had much success in implementing the programs, but that's because we've been confined typically in the realm of we will do sports video games because that's what we understand. And I think now is a time where we can, pretty much take the blinders off and we can go and we can figure out what the students play. Empowering the students to voice what they want to play and following trends, that's going to be the biggest thing to take away from here. And even if that means you're only doing 2 things, 3 things, that's fine. Just make sure that you're keeping it within the wheelhouse of what the students want. I think a lot of us as programmers, sometimes we get a little afraid to branch out. We know flag, we know basketball, we know sports ball, so that's what we do. A lot of it is going to be kind of transcending that era and figuring out how we can put on successful virtual programming, and then basically making sure too that we can make it a holistic experience. Because a lot of people are going to recognize that there will be maybe a deficit kind of in that physical area of wellness that's there, but how can we hit the other ones?
Yeah, so make sure you do throw your questions into the chat. We would love to hear what's on your mind at this point, knowing that many of us have either wrapped programming for this academic year or looking at potential summer programs. We also know that many of us have a lot of unknown factors going into fall programming. I know for us, we're planning a plan A and a plan B. What plan A is if we're able to offer sports in some capacity in person, what that looks like, and plan B is if we're not. So that's continuing our virtual programming, hybriding what we can if we are able to offer socially distanced programs in person. But for each of us, that's going to look very different based on where our institutions are at, if decisions have been made yet. So question that has come up from Tom is about Discord. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Discord is a virtual chat service that allows for text or talk between gamers. They can use their gamer tags to register. They can link to their Twitches, their different handles, and create online digital communities for connecting in the gaming world. It's a very well-known and popular service. And Tom's question is about if anybody's using Discord, what bots they are using to moderate their server. I would also love to hear any input on that, since that is something that we need to implement moving towards summer, since we will not be able to have student employees moderating our servers at that time.
So one of the things that you can do, and this is mainly going to be drawing on my experience with Twitch and the bots that are available there. So a lot of the bots that you kind of see there, they are not natively built in to the streaming stuff that you use. And we're just going to go on that kind of realm first, and then we'll expand out to Discord. So a bot is exactly what it sounds like. It's a program that's built in, and it can provide functions for you that are in there. Most of the times, if you have a command that you put in, you do a exclamation point, and then I'm just going to put that in the chat. So that's typically what a command will look like for a bot that's in there. We have ones that are built into Rec Without Borders, and it's like an exclamation point sign up, and that way moderators aren't consistently putting out commands or putting the same information out consistently and repetitively. Anyone that knows the command, or a moderator that just needs to do something quick and in a pinch, they can go exclamation point, type in whatever that programmed command is, and it'll execute something. So it's very, very, very basic programming. It's already built. You just have to give it a input and then tell it what the output is. Ones that are popular for streaming include Nightbot. There's another one called MooBot, but Discord has other ones that you can implement in there. That's not something that I put in, but our esports club actually has a bot that when you join their server, they have it built in, so that way it automatically filters you into something called a student verification that's in there. And then you have to enter in your email, and the bot is smart enough to that it sends out a email confirming that you belong in that server. You have to basically do the dual factor authentication that they have set up through there. And this isn't a university affiliated thing, by the way. This is just our club setting that up on their own. And then boom, that's how they check that out. It won't send to any other email. So if they try to do to a Gmail, they say, oh, we can't send to that, try again.
Yeah,
so it is possible.
Sorry, Justin. We have a bot built into our Discord server that one of our students who runs several other Discords on his own time has used in the past. We don't currently have it programmed to do any full moderating, but we can program it to do so. I don't know if it has a proper name other than what is on here, but I'll put it into the chat. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Generally, what I've done is I've just Googled these bots and what server I'm trying to get them on, and then that's worked out well.
When you say moderation, are you talking about like a ticket bot, like a mail mod for people to in the server to submit support tickets to, or a bot that analyzes the text for profanity or anything of that nature?
Bots can do both. Bots are able to basically kind of follow through with that. Is that what your question was, or did I misunderstand that?
I'm looking for profanity and other types of community moderation, which is also what I'm looking for. Okay.
I was wondering. All right.
Streamlabs might be something to look into for that. I know that they definitely do that for streaming that's in there. I think that they're trying to expand out into Discord as well. But one of the easiest things, kind of what Shana has said, is literally just kind of type in the platform that you're trying to use, so Discord, and then bots, and just kind of go from there. A lot of it's going to be kind of research and development on your own end. Like, there is not one tried and true method that is perfect for, anything. A lot of it's going to be a lot of groundwork on your side, but that is something we kind of have, like a running list of things that we can follow up on. So even if we don't have the concrete answer, or like Shana and Justin recommend this, like, we can follow up on it and make sure that that's made available after it's there. One of the questions that I was kind of seeing though too that came back up, it was after the bots question. It came up from Anthony. It was what recommendations do you all have for websites that can be used for esport tournaments? So I kind of want to throw a question back out at Anthony. So one, what are you already using, if anything, to kind of facilitate your programming, and what makes you think that you need to have a specific website for your esport tournaments? So just to kind of understand where you're coming from.
So we use IM leagues for all of our intramurals and club sports, but at Mount St. Mary's, we just hired a esports director. So we've been kind of getting into the esports realm. And me and the esports director have been kind of collaborating over the past few months with the downtime that we've had. And we tried using Battlefy for a Super Smash Bros. Tournament, and we had a little bit of issues with how to communicate to the participants. But the ones that did participate were pretty devout in the esports realm and the gaming community. So they're very understanding of the struggles we had. But we're just kind of looking at trying to find different platforms to use to set up tournaments, maybe modify tournaments in that kind of sense.
Okay. Is there anything that makes it so that way you all would not be able to adapt IM leagues? I know a lot of the issues that institutions are finding now is that if you find a really good tool that you think is going to be great, it's one more thing for the student. It's one more thing for the students to have to learn. So for us right now at USC, we're kind of trying to centralize everything that we have, because we know that within the greater umbrella of student life, there's a bunch of different offices. So like campus recreation, the group we have called Gamecock Entertainment, which is basically kind of like student life programming, and a bunch of other groups. We all seem to be competing for the same students, and we're doing so on multiple platforms. So they're kind of getting inundated. I think this is a great time to continue working with your esport director and kind of figure out where you can consolidate, whether that is with IM leagues or if it's with something else. But has IM leagues been trialed yet through you all, and then he's just found that is not, or not he, but that person has found that it is not able to be used for what you're trying to need it for?
No, we haven't used IM leagues yet for an esports tournament. We weren't really sure if it was able to be done in IM leagues or not. So he had recommended Battlefy, so that's why we used it. And we had the few participants that we had in the Super Smash Bros. Tournament, they were half people were more of intramural people, and the other half were esports. So the half that we had the communication issues with were more on the intramural side. Okay. And it was kind of they've never used Battlefy before, so that was kind of where their issues were coming from.
Okay. So I think this is just going to have to kind of be a battle of compromise. You're going to need to figure out where you can get the most people. We know that for esports, we're always going to attract the hardcore people, the people that already have the licenses, they have the equipment, they have that kind of already ingrained in themselves. We know we're going to get to them 100%. The main challenge that we're going to have as programmers is appealing to the casuals that are out there. And again, these are people that, maybe don't have the licenses as well. Titles like Super Smash are popular. They're visible. We know what they are because it's attached to the name brand of Nintendo. Like those of us that have come up in it, or even if we're just kind of passive and we're aware of what's out there, we know what it is. But I think another thing to look at is finding games or finding activities that are free to play. So that way you're removing that financial and that technological barrier, because that's kind of another aspect of essentially what it is privilege too. You're privileged to have the financial capability to go out and get those things. If there can be a way that you can have, if everyone in here is not familiar, there's something called Steam. It's not a platform, it's a marketplace that's in there. You can find free to play titles that are on there, and you can advertise those out. It may not be very snappy. It might not be the name brand that you're looking for, but especially if you're worried about your numbers, find those free to play titles that you can expand out to. That's in there. Going back to the IM leagues thing though, I don't think you need your own dedicated, like a different website other than what you're using. Because realistically, what do we need it for? We need it for scheduling. We need it for communication, roughly. And then you need it for announcing results that are in there. I don't think there's a need to go for, what was it? It was the GG website. So there was like smash.gg, Battlefly. I don't think there's a need for those. Like they might be built specifically for something, but why reinvent the wheel if you already have something? Ultimately, you have to do what's good for your program and good for your students. But that's kind of my opinion on that. We've seen a lot of websites kind of pop up, and then they started marketing out to professionals saying, hey, use our website, use our website. Why use that if we already have something that's in place? We just have to figure out how to adapt it.
I'd be curious to hear from anybody who might be using Fusion IM or Do Sports Easy instead of IM Leagues, and to see if you have had any challenges or successes with offering esports through those platforms.
And for anybody that hasn't seen in chat, Matt Snyder actually dropped in a link that was Airtable for all the best Discord bots.
Yeah, so I'm actually a startup founder. We built a multi-sided platform. So it's a social network for gamers to list what they do, what they play, and where they are. And the other side's for organizations to create leagues and tournaments. We've automated the entire process from interest, event creation, scheduling. Pretty much you just got to hit start. We signed a 2-year exclusive partnership with the National Recreation and Parks Association to essentially create a little league scene. I put my email address in there. If anyone wants to get on our beta list, just feel free to shoot me an email. And I'm in Rock Hill, South Carolina, so go Cox.
Go Cox. Okay, so we've kind of covered bots. There was a question. Has anyone worked with UNI Esports Group to help build esports programs?
So before we get to there, I do want to address the question about geeks.gg as well as Mission Control and the other systems that we've sort of loosely touched upon. I know that many of those platforms offered a deal. I don't know if it expired June 1st or July 1st. So if somebody knows that information, let me know, where it was free to beta launch the program with your university until that date, and then you would pay per player. So it's July 1st for Geeks. Thank you, Michael. I used Geeks earlier in the year when it was still very heavily in beta mode. It wasn't the right fit for us, and we actually canceled our contract with Geeks during the pandemic because it just wasn't meeting the needs of our students. So I think, like Justin mentioned, one thing to note is what's going to meet the needs of your students, what's going to work best for them, and how willing are you to reinvent the wheel with launching another platform for them to use. And Mission Control August 1, but it's a $400 startup fee. So thank you, John.
Shana, what issues have you been having with, I guess, Geeks and the platforms? Like what are you looking for that you're not getting?
For me, Geeks was not an intuitive system. So as somebody who is not a gamer, bringing in student employees who are gamers, we had the same experience of feeling like there was an ineffective design for what we needed, and just a lot of different concerns with the way that the platform itself was structured and designed to be used. From building our leagues to building tournaments, it was not as intuitive and user-friendly for both parties, participant and admin.
Okay, is that from like a campus activities office or intramurals?
Intramurals.
Okay.
So I understand, and if somebody uses Mission Control, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mission Control does a lot of the facilitation portion for you. You provide them with the majority of the information you need and want to have used, but they effectively run the programs and tournaments that you want to be offering. I believe you have to build your server with them, but then they run it for you. So that is also something to consider if you're not a gamer person. That might be the better route for you, but you'll definitely want to consult with each of these different groups that are available with the .gg servers, and where possible get those hands-on tutorials with them and understand where they're at in terms of their systems being developed. If they're still in beta, it means that they are still working out bugs and testing out different features that may or may not end up in the final product. If they're beyond that point and have their system ready to go in its alpha mode, then you might expect different challenges in terms of learning curve, but it is a system that is more ready for the public face.
And then Dom from UNO, just kind of floating back to your question that you posed with UNI Esports. I do not have any knowledge on that platform right now, but that's something that I can kind of do a little bit more researching into, and I can get that back to you. It looks like Creighton in Omaha uses that as well, so we can kind of poke them, kind of see if they have any pre-existing knowledge, and then kind of go from there. Give me maybe about a week, and then I can try and get that to you.
Yeah, we also haven't really looked into UNI Esports yet. I've got some basic contact information for outreach, but at this point, with summer program being canceled for us, it hasn't been at the top of my priority list.
Kind of moving into some of the other questions that we had. So these look like, I guess they may have been carryovers from part 2 that were in there. So there were some things for how are you updating your participation waiver now that programming is moved to virtual? I think this is going to vary heavily from school to school, but especially if your waivers are built around I know here at U of SC, they're more so built around something called the Carolinian Creed and basically our student code of conduct. That's pretty much, I think, what we're going to be sticking with on our end. It's broad enough that it can encompass a lot of, activities that maybe you wouldn't see in like traditional sports. So, if you see virtual cheating, if you're using, bots in game, so like a different kind of bot, like an aim bot to gain an illegal advantage, that can be something that, we can kind of have fall broadly under the student code of conduct and the Carolinian Creed and kind of fall back in there. I think that if you edit your waivers to get more into the minutia of esports, that's going to get a little dangerous. It's in there. You probably want to go broader to kind of cover your base and, when possible, link to student code of conduct. A lot of the stuff that you may have to deal with in esports could relate to, trolling, could relate to, inflammatory, either verbal or text communications that are in there. You want to probably go as broad as possible, and then maybe have a talk with if you have a conduct office as well, kind of see what their take is on that. But I know we took a look at it on our side, and we felt that we were pretty confident in how broad it was already in going. Does anybody have any feedback too on the waiver stuff that they've already looked into, or are there any frustrations? Are there any questions that you have on your side? Is anyone planning on not doing waivers for virtual programming?
Our plan effectively is to use our standard hold harmless agreement, which covers virtual programs and all of our in-person programs across the entire recreation department. It's what's built into IM leagues, it's what's built into Fusion. So it's one waiver that covers everything. If we are not using IM leagues, then we simply have a statement on our Discord server about code of conduct, student conduct, and just general community expectations. But we are looking at whether or not we will add a message about healthy habits in addition to what we already have on there.
Kind of going off the healthy habits as well, I think that one of the important things that you can do here, and this is where, I definitely picked this up from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I know that their assistant director, Dom Williams, is in here. He was my former director when I was a GA. But if your schools don't already have a dimensional wellness approach, or if your rec departments don't, it might be something worth looking into, because I know there's a lot of skepticism right now of, why are we going to try and push virtual programming if we have the potential to get back to in-person? And there is going to be a fall off. Right now, we're kind of in this big ramp up period, and we're going to eventually plateau once in-person activities start becoming, safer. Once the measures that schools are putting in place, once they're confident, it's going to plateau, and then inevitably it is going to fall off. It's going to plateau again at a higher level compared to where it was. But I think that we all, as programmers and as SA pros, we need to realize that if we didn't already have a dimensional wellness approach, there's a whole population of students that don't get into our buildings. They don't go to the fitness center. They don't go and they don't do outdoor rec programming. They don't compete in competitive sports because the building is not for them, whether it's an accessibility concern or if they just don't like it. We need to figure out where we can meet them where they are. The games and everything that we do, they don't have to be competitive. They can be community building. there is nothing that would keep someone from running a successful esports program and having it just be a Minecraft server that is just for your school. And you all could build a virtual campus. You could build a virtual representation of what your campus is like. That would be a very successful program, and it doesn't have to rely on tracking scores. It can just fall around that recurring participation that's in there. This is going to be a good time, and I know I've said it on the unofficial things that I've been in on in the past, but you need to challenge the conventions of what you normally do. It doesn't have to be competitive. We at Rec Without Borders, we kind of came up with 3 guiding principles that are going to kind of guide our decision making as we go, and we kind of adapted that off of the gaming term LFG. If you were a part of any of the things that have gone on in the past with us for these roundtables, if you've heard LFG, it stands for looking for group. All right. We changed it to link, free, and grow. We're here to link students and institutions together. Anything and everything that Rec Without Borders does will be free. And then we're here to grow, whether that's grow us as professionals and then to grow what we are able to do and able to execute, or causing growth for the students and participants through the programming that we do. So if we're doing trivia, we're helping them grow their educational base. We can make them smarter. If we're going through, Minecraft and we're doing a collaborative server, because I think, Tamara said that RIT did that with Minecraft too. I think there was another school that they built an entire virtual campus, but when you're doing that, you're building a virtual community that's there. Like, this does not have to be competitive to be successful. Does anybody in here, like everyone's super quiet, and I know like that's kind of how these things go, but that throws me for a loop. Does anybody have any just wild ideas that you've had that you haven't thrown out because you've just been afraid that it's going to immediately backfire or that other people will think it's stupid? Don't everybody be quiet now. Sylvain, I see you down there, man. I know you're sitting on like 3 or 4 ideas. You're an Arsenal fan, but I know you've got ideas, my friend. Got nothing.
I think Tom makes a good point in the chat too. I think this semester and quarter for many of us, we were reacting to quarantine and pandemic and just a sudden change in what we needed to offer for programs. And that inevitably ended up with recreation departments, campus activities, student life, wellness, all of these different program areas over inundating our students with the same things over and over. I know that our international studies office is offering yoga every Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. and Friday afternoons to the international students, but Rec also does that. I know that campus activities is offering trivia nights, so are we, and so is Rec Without Borders. So we need to make sure that we focus on not overcompensating for a lack of in-person programming, like Tom said, but also being very intentional with our programming, knowing that we can strategically partner with other groups on campus. We're not competing for the audience. We want the same audience. We want the same participants, and that they might be reaching students different than who we reach in our traditional spaces.
Yeah, Shannon, if I can follow up on that, I think one of the other NIRSA roundtables really kind of drove it home in the sense that nobody on campus owns wellness. We're all partners in it. And when we try to just over-program or we try to just capture participations, like ultimately all we're doing is just trying to justify why we exist on campus. But I mean, we know that we are a major part of campus, and we have to resist that temptation to just offer 30 different things that aren't necessarily the most quality thing, because a lot of the times what we've experienced with our esports program at FIU is that the reason they're doing virtual programming is because they want to connect with people, and this is the only way to do it right now. So you kind of have to go back to your why on campus, and maybe it's different, but ultimately if you're focusing on the interaction piece and the quality aspect, you might have to scale back your programming. But ultimately the goal is to connect with students in something that all of us don't have any experience with right now. So it's challenging, but I would strongly encourage you, because the students that walk away virtually, it's really hard to get them back.
This is also an opportunity to engage the online class community that may be attending remote campus. It's an offering that never really was there before.
Like Justin said earlier, don't be scared to try anything. There's a population for almost everything we offer. A game like Hearthstone, I still don't know what it is, but every time I kind of look into it, there's a group that comes together that's looking for it, offering stuff like Words with Friends. I had 29 people show up for that one. So it doesn't really matter what you offer. There's a population that's looking for it. Going forward, I'm looking at Settlers of Catan. Still have never played it, don't know anything about it, but I know there's someone on campus that's looking for it. So, I mean, I think right now is the best time to just try something different that we're not used to and just giving it a shot and see what comes of it. So that's, I know he called me out earlier and I didn't want to say anything, but we're just trying these different things just to see what comes of it. If you throw it out there, there's a few people that are looking for it, and most likely it's people that have never showed up into our buildings, have never participated in any of our programmings. And right now we're giving them the opportunity to kind of see what we have to offer. And who knows, when we get back on campus, they might show up into our buildings.
Kind of jumping back off, not the most recent thing that Tom put in the chat, but I think the second most recent thing. So basically, this is kind of one of the approaches that U of SC is taking. So has anyone already tried linking up with the other offices that you know are doing virtual programming to try and consolidate resources? I'll take that as like a kind of sort of yes, no. Okay. So one of the things to look at with that, oh, Dan, go ahead. Sorry, I see you popping up.
Okay. Hey, I'm Dan Gardner at William & Mary. I was going to mention that we worked, at least talked to the Esports student organization on campus because they have a lot of people and resources. We've not done anything meaningful yet. We're just putting our toes in the water as far as running and creating programming. But we've at least been able to hammer out lots of cross communication and cross marketing so that whatever we put in place in the summer, us and the esports student org can share it like it's one thing and one idea and one pathway. So I think that's been important.
Anyone else had any interactions with other cross-campus groups, whether it is a student org or whether it's an actual entity of the university, talking about kind of consolidating efforts and resources? Or has anybody tried and received roadblocks?
Justin, so with all this, I kind of just find out there's a lot of campus groups that already exist. So here at Penn State, we have an esports club. We have a Rocket League club by itself. We have a video game club, and we have all these clubs that I did not know existed. So I met with the individual clubs and just talked about how we can both work on campus so we don't step on each other's toes. And wherever they were already doing well, I just left them with that. So a game like League of Legends, they're well organized, so I don't need to do anything with that. So they have that. A game like Overwatch, they explained to me that the casual gamer might be coming to me and they'll keep the competitive gamers. And we can even create space for the competitive gamers to play with their friends in a casual setting. So we just had those dialogues and talked about how we can each help each other out. We don't have to step on each other's toes. If they know they have casual gamers that's looking for something, they just send it to us. And if we have competitive gamers that are looking for a space, and we just send them to them. And just having those conversations has kind of helped us understand what we're doing. And they've been easy to talk to. They've been helping us with kind of how we're supposed to go about making this happen. So I would say just look at who's on your campus, and I did not know we had like 20 video game club that existed on this campus. And after talking to them, it kind of made it easier for me. And a lot of them want to help you create this program. So I've been in communication with a lot of those clubs, and a lot of the ideas are coming from them on what they want to see on campus in conjunction with what they're already doing on campus.
Those are all excellent points. Aaron brought up something really good in chat as well, saying that he's actually had some difficulties with the esports program that's there. So Aaron, is this like a student org, or is this an actual like a structured esports program?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Aaron Brooks. I'm the manager of intramural sports at the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio. We actually have a varsity esports program, a team that they compete nationally. I'm so out of my depth with esports, so I jump on these to try to learn as much as I can. But when this whole thing first hit, I tried to reach out to see what A, I could learn, and B, what I could come up with to try to offer for our students. I mean, we've got national championship winning esports varsity team, so I figured why not try to work, right? Well, they're more concerned with on-campus events because it's more high profile. So they get more recognition if we do something on campus than if we do to offer for them just something for our students to virtually log into. So like he gave me a couple suggestions of 3 games to do, but really that was it. I know that Rocket League and some other things are pretty big, but they won't let me use their servers. So there are a lot of things that I've tried to work with them on, but unless it's on campus, they really don't want to help.
I'm guessing that they probably won't share their space as well to facilitate programs being held out of. So if they have like a designated facility, they probably won't have that open up to IMs.
Sorry, the AC's running if it's hard to hear me. Whenever we get back onto campus, they're going to be a little bit more receptive to allowing our students to go into their spacing. But until we can get students onto campus, they're really not interested in helping intramurals out a whole lot.
Okay, I think something to look at as well for this again is that just knowing what Aaron too. What if you don't have to go back on camera or audio if you don't want to, but if you don't mind just typing in the other games that they recommended to you into the chat just to kind of look at. So one, again, just kind of going off my principles of LFG. So link free and grow. Free does not apply to Rocket League. It's an excellent title. Rocket League is very open to having programs be run using their licenses. But again, it's on people actually owning the licenses to be able to use it. There's going to be a whole population of gamers that don't get to experience it because, you know, they either don't want to spend the $20 or they don't have the $20 to spend. I think that knowing what access you have to resources on campus. So if you know that whether you're under like, you know, just in your campus rec department alone, or if it's a higher question of like, you know, student affairs or student life, whatever it is at your university, you know, trying to see if there's a way to share resources, especially monetary ones for license purchasing. So that way too, if you know that you need to hold an event, so Aaron says FIFA, NBA 2K, Rocket League, Super Smash, but nobody can currently get a Switch. Oh yeah, because they're probably all on back order right now. Yeah, none of those titles are free. None of those are free. There are some adaptation, like there's a few free sports games that you can get on your phone, but that's it. And then they're super stripped down. So these are probably good for them in their current setup. But if you're trying to start from grassroots, your numbers are going to be low for all of these. You know, FIFA, it's just going to apply to that crowd that actually has it. Again, for 2K, like it's just the hardest thing is going to be realizing that these AAA titles, that these ones produced by, you know, Electronic Arts, EA Sports, that they're probably not going to be the best for when you're starting out a program. Literally the best ones that you're going to be able to go out to are those free-to-play titles, are going to be those programs that you can run without students having to get a license in there. Sorry, that's honestly just really frustrating to see. Chris puts out, have any opinions changed on offering first-person shooter games? Oh, Chris, I am glad you asked. Okay. Has anyone in here automatically received like a stop sign from your higher-ups saying like, no, you cannot offer first-person shooters or games that have simulated violence?
Yes.
Yeah, Justin, okay. I guess to speak on that, you know, because I think the position I'm in is I think I have the autonomy to offer it, but it is trying to offer what is best interest. So we're kind of using what the mass majority of, I guess, NIRSA professionals are going to use. So I kind of have that autonomy, but just, obviously asking the question again.
I think one of the things to kind of look at, and this is going to be, a lot of this is kind of based off the approach that my director of campus recreation has given me. A lot of the questions that he asks us are why. And, why are we doing this? Why are we not doing it? What is keeping us from doing this? And then basically, why are we doing something that has always been done, or why are we not doing something that has historically not been done? So I think this is a good time now to kind of start challenging those conventions and saying, like, okay, if we know that we've been told that we cannot do first person, any kind of game with simulated violence, because this could even extend out to games like Street Fighter, which has a massive competitive scene. If you're either not comfortable or if your higher ups are not comfortable, ask them why. Because I guarantee you, if they're not getting that kind of stimuli from us and our programs, they're getting it from somewhere else. There's a massive scene that you can apply to, or that you can tap into for your programming. So Call of Duty Warzone is a big thing right now. Everyone's heard about Fortnite. Everyone's heard about Apex Legends. These kind of free-for-all, drop 100 people onto an island, and then you just go. Those are very popular right now. Some of the biggest names in esports, like, Ninja, Dr. Lupo, these big, high-profile content creators, they've made a pretty penny off of these games, right? We need to push it up and challenge, why? Why do we not, there's been a lot of things that have come out, mainly back in the 90s and early 2000s, they're saying, we don't want these violent games out there because it promotes violence. A lot of times that's been disproven. A casual gamer is not going to go in, they're not going to play Overwatch, which is very cartoonized, violence that's in there. It's an objective game, you have multiple things that you can do, but they're not going to go out and then say, well, man, now I feel like hurting people. All right, this has been disproven, by multiple sources. It's just something that you kind of need to look into. If you personally are not comfortable hosting these activities because you don't know the game, or it's just something that, that you're against, that's fine, but make sure too that your students are clamoring for it. The most successful program I think that we've run to date here at U of SC, it was a Call of Duty offering that was there. And I want to say it was right before that Warzone, kind of that Hunger Games style event came out, or that expansion came out. It was this thing called Gun Game, where you basically have to go in and work through a progression until you eventually win the game. So if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine, but make sure that your students aren't clamoring for it, because if that's where they're at, then you kind of got to meet them there. And I know that John just says that Gun Game or Gunfight was huge for them too, and then too, if your schools aren't going to let violent games go in, then, does that mean that Smash has to come off the table then? A lot of it has to do with perception and consistency too. If they're not going to allow Call of Duty, that's very realistic. Then you need to say, okay, well, can we do Overwatch? If they say no, then it's like, okay, can we do Street Fighter? No. Okay, can we do Smash? And then, like, I know for me, I tier them all up on the same thing. They have cartoon violence. Like, there's a whole ESRB rating group that is out there that has rated these games, right? If the game is rated M for mature, 18 plus, pretty much all of our students are 18 plus. I think that we can let them make the decisions for themselves, but that's obviously, it's going to be a conversation that we're going to have, at the institutional level. I know that we have the green light here. I'm pretty sure that if the major flagship institution for the state of South Carolina has a green light to do it, that should be an indicator for everyone else. Like, okay, it's okay here. Let's figure out why we're not able to do it at these other places.
We don't always make wise choices in South Carolina.
Yeah, that is true, but a lot of us try to.
Also, if you all have an intramural or campus activities Facebook page, if you go to fb.gg, Facebook Gaming has a create a tournament option now that you can create with a group. So if it's a private group for students on Facebook, which I assume most are on, that could be a free option where everyone's kind of consolidated.
Matthew, can you share that link in the chat for everybody? Perfect.
Oops, it's on private. Okay.
I did want to bring up a question that was submitted to us earlier that was exactly about first-person shooters, actually from my director, which is, are any universities considering pre-survey or pre-registration questions in order to offer esports, especially if you're considering first-person shooter, to the effect of acknowledging that esports can contribute to stress, and it is a different type of strenuous activity in terms of strain on the eyes and things like that. It can also cause elevated heart rate depending on the type of game that you're playing. It's a sedentary activity more often than not. So are any schools out there looking into ways to kind of put that on the forefront as part of their registration process, or otherwise to be able to say to their students, be mindful of these things, be mindful that you may end up sitting for a few hours at a time. How are you going to stay active? And talk about instilling healthy habits, stepping away from those screens when they need to.
So this is Drew Bohm from UT Arlington. So slightly different perspective because I'm actually in charge of the esports program here. And so what we do is there's a health and fitness side to the varsity program. So this semester it was very simple, just, hey, work out 3 to 4 times a week, and you're required to report that in. So that could be cardio, going to the gym, etc. I've been in talks with our kinesiology department too, and they're possibly going to be working with us and putting some stuff together, you know, essentially a guide that we can refer to our students. This will go over everything from working out to eye strain, posture, etc. So that's kind of on the forefront too, along with the healthy habits, just making sure, you know, you're not falling below certain grade point averages, etc. So it's very different than, you know, from the recreation perspective, essentially, because we're, you know, trying to win. That's the goal, but it's a big part for us to essentially make sure that our students are staying healthy too. And so we have a huge club here at UTA. The Discord server is almost at like 2,000 students, I think. And you know, a lot of the stuff that we're doing with the varsity program is knowledge that we share and collaborate too with the club, which is essentially the esports community at UTA too. So there's definitely a big emphasis on that, making sure our students are healthy and not just, you know, staring at a screen for 8 hours a day straight and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. That sounds like it's going to be a great resource. I'd love to see what you end up coming up with.
Definitely. Drew, no, that's an excellent point. I know that it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you guys are basically the varsity program for your school, right?
Right.
I think that that's still an approach that could be applied to, again, like a broader student life concept. I know one of the things that we were trying to do here at U of SC was for the Carolina Welcome, what was normally Welcome Week, but now it's a Welcome Period because of how non-compressed the timelines are now, you know, looking at everything from move-in to recruitment and everything. You know, there has historically been a loyalty point system here that's tied primarily to athletics, but the conversation has been opened up to, okay, what can we maybe do at the broader student life level? Is there a way that we can promote, like, one, you can still go to any in-person offerings that are still there, even if they have the limits, but, you know, participate in virtual offerings, you know, whether that's, you know, it's the Group X that we host on Instagram Live, or if it's trivia or other things, you know, that might be something to look into as well with your cross-campus partners and say, like, okay, cool, what are you doing that we can promote? And then figure out, again, like, I'm going to always tie it back to dimensional wellness. So how can we, you know, hit all the 8 aspects on that wheel? So if we know that we're going to do yoga on Instagram Live, boom, that's physical wellness. But if we know that, you know, maybe a student success center is going to do a trivia game and a lot of their questions are going to be based around budgeting, okay, well, that's financial wellness right there. This is a really good time to again, break down those silos, not just in your departments. Like this is a big remodeling period here at U of SC, because now we've put together these cross office bodies to where we're like, okay, well, we know that Student Success Center is doing this, the Leadership and Service Center is doing this, Campus Recreation is doing this. Okay, we're making a mass calendar of virtual offerings. And if we know that one group is very good at something, we're not going to, again, going back to what Sylvain was saying, we're not going to step on their toes. We're not going to reinvent the wheel twice. We're going to support them and we're going to ask, how can we help them? So if that means that they're handling the program, but they need moderators in chat, you better believe that we're all going to go out, oh my gosh, this is weird. I'm brain farting on a roundtable. We're going to get proficient in the platform that we need to use, and then we're going to go out and we're going to help them, even if it's not our program. Because I think the biggest thing that we all need to take away from this period is that it's not about our program. it's about the students. And if we serve the students, then we're fulfilling the needs of our program, even if the numbers don't show it.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a period where we grow more into being student affairs and student life professionals, as opposed to just being competitive sport and campus rec professionals. Like, we were brought here for the students pay our paychecks. We need to make sure that we're serving them in the best way possible.
Speaking of proficiency, somebody did ask the question about the NIRSA Championship Series and the position that the series has on esports and whether or not that will be incorporated into the future. At this point in time, we have decided to not make any decision on esports as a competitive avenue. We want to make sure that we're offering the best possible programs with basketball, tennis, soccer, and flag football before we expand to other opportunities. Not to say that esports won't eventually be something that we incorporate into the series. It most likely will. It's definitely a big topic of conversation, but it's not something that we have in the plans for 2020 to 2021. So I did want to address that, but you are always able to submit suggestions and ideas. And I know that Region 4 is doing their own type of esports competition, or did one. So I would love to hear about what that looked like for those in Region 4. And I know that Region 1 did something similar as well with a Rocket League tournament. So there's always opportunities to do those kinds of things at a slightly smaller scale or in an unofficial scale. And those are great ways to demonstrate to the series how this could be successful at that larger scale for us. On the subject of the esports task force, the 2019 to 2020 task force did conclude their duties. Their information is still available and they are still considered experts in the esports realm and have a lot of different resources available. I sent a link earlier in the Zoom chat to that information. It's on the NIRSA Connect, along with a guide to esports terminology. So if there's language surrounding esports that you're less familiar with, or language that we've used here in this conversation that you're unsure of, that is a great resource as well to get that information from. We have about 7 minutes left, so I'd love to see if there's any other questions that people have that we haven't gotten to yet. Does anyone collaborate with enrollment services to recruit new students by promoting esports? That is a great question.
I can answer that kind of again. At UTA, kind of a little bit. I know I've spoken, so basically whenever people have been given tours and that kind of stuff, I've had students reach out to me through Discord and stuff asking if they can come by and talk. And so, I've had someone who's giving a tour, kind of bring them over to, we're in the rec center because, varsity program here is under the rec. Bring them over and they'll stop by and talk to me briefly and that kind of stuff. But I know especially at some of the small, my previous job at University of St. Mary, I'd go out with some of the admissions counselors to big events and recruitment affairs, and I'd literally stand there with them. We'd have students walk up and I'd have, hey, you interested in esports? And they're like, yeah, I play this game. And then we talk for like 30 minutes sometimes plus. So there's a lot of opportunities. And I mean, honestly, from even UTA and USM, I've seen a ton of students that honestly otherwise wouldn't go to college that are coming specifically because of esports programs. And even at UTA, before the varsity program was there, I know a lot of students that went because of the club. So even if it's not officially a varsity program, there's a community there that's built around esports. There's going to be a lot of students that get excited because they might not participate in all these other sports. There might not be a competitive avenue for them until they see, hey, I've been playing Overwatch or League of Legends or something for 3 years and I love that game. I'd love to play with this community here at the school that I'm considering. So
thanks, Drew. Yeah, recruitment has definitely not been at the top of our list at Central Washington in terms of an avenue to use esports with, but it is something that I know a lot of these .gg servers are able to offer, where they can have your server be exclusive to your students or can open up for admission days. So that's a cool feature that they do offer, and it means that there is a precedent for that kind of thing existing. Another question that we had was about, are we worried about inundating students with being in front of a computer and TV and having burnout? Absolutely. My student staff who have been teleworking this quarter reached a point where it was all over their faces in every Zoom call that they were just exhausted at being in front of a screen. So that brings us back to that topic of being very intentional with what we're offering, and working as collaboratively as possible with other departments on our campus to make sure that we are not overwhelming them with options to be in front of a screen, and to get creative with the use of those platforms. Anything that can be pushed to mobile, where they can spend some time outside and do it from their phone, where they can participate in an event while on the move. Those are the kinds of things that we want to start thinking about moving forward if we are to continue virtual programming in this regard.
Agreed. Some programs that are already out there. I know that everyone already knows what Pokemon Go is, and then there was Harry Potter Hogwarts Unite. These are augmented reality games where you can, again, get people active and outside while still kind of taking place in an activity that's behind a screen. Tom from FIU had a really good thing that he brought up again, and it was kind of talking about, I think he said was open rec esports. And we kind of got talking on a little bit of a private chain, but basically it kind of went back to like an LFG approach, that looking for group thing. So even if at minimum, if you don't have any structured programs that run, if you're trying to build the capacity for, having a community, basically for offering these esport virtual programmings, at minimum, try and make, if it's a Discord, if it's some other kind of campus platform, if those of you that have student orgs, if you're able to make it like a, Campus Labs Engage, we call it Garnetgate here. If you have anything like that, at least make a social hub so that way they can come in and they can find other students that they can play something with. If at minimum that is all we do is, rec professionals or SL professionals, then we've done our job. Let's make the connections, kind of see if, the community kind of takes off at a grassroots level there. And then, if you know that you can't do structured programming now, wait and see how that LFG approach, that looking for group approach does. And then see, okay, where can we start making incremental gains? Do a little something here, see how it goes, do a little something there. We don't have to hit, we don't have to be batting, 1,000 right off the gate. 1% aggregate marginal gains, right? Just keep building and building and building, build the momentum, capitalize on the progress, and go from there. Don't be discouraged when it doesn't take off, because chances are it's not going to take off right then and there. You're not going to be an industry leader right out of the gate.
Yeah, and Justin, I would love to take the credit for the idea, but that actually came out of our student survey, in the sense that we sent that to all of our members, not just the people who are already playing IMs. And one of the reasons that people stay away from IMs is that they don't want to compete. And even though some of these games, like Smash, I am playing against you, they don't really think of it as wins and losses. They're thinking of it as like, I'm just playing with my friends. So that really challenged us to kind of restructure our format to try and get the space where we know intuitively in the facility, it's a good idea to keep some courts open so that people can just play pickup basketball, because that's how they play basketball. They don't necessarily need 5-on-5 with an official on the scorer's table for it to feel legitimate. And so our students really did lead that way. So I'm sure that that's more common than just on this campus.
Yeah, definitely. No, leave it to the students to lead the way. At the end of the day, we're all human and we just want to connect with one another. So again, if the students show us what it really is, no, that's awesome.
That's definitely how our approach has been this quarter for esports at Central, is that we built this Discord, we built our leagues into IM leagues, we offered them the competitive avenue, but we left it up to them to decide if that was the route they wanted to go or not. By and large, they chose not to use the IM leagues features to challenge each other and report scores, and instead chose to maximize just playing opportunity, connecting with others who were on the same games as they were. I'll say like Super Smash for us in our Discord channel has been our most active game all quarter, where they're providing each other with tips on what kinds of features they like, what settings they prefer, sending different videos from YouTube that they found of different gameplay and tricks that they've learned. And it's been really awesome to be able to see that community grow and to be able to connect these players. It seems, without surveying them, that their ultimate goal was to connect with other players, whatever that might have looked like. And they chose not to compete. Brooks, I agree. I also wish I had a Switch so I could play. Any final questions before we wrap up? This video has been recorded. The chat will be shared on the NIRSA Ideas in Motion recorded page. It's usually up within 24 hours. I know that Matthew Snyder has put his contact information in the chat as well. So thank you, Matthew, for being an additional resource for everyone out
No
there.
problem.
If anybody wants to get in touch with me, I did put my email in the chat as well, and I'll put it in again. I am happy to share any resources that I have, whether it's from the task force or any terminology, any rules that we may have. I am happy to connect with anybody after this. So feel free.
Has anyone used, so Microsoft has an Xbox client for Windows desktop. So all your computer labs are essentially equipped with an Xbox, and it's, they have the Xbox Games Pass on there. So it's $10 a month for, I think, 360 games right now. And it's a lot of the competitive titles in the esports scene. So that could be a fairly easy entry point to get another, I guess, console in your inventory to entertain the students on campus.
Yeah, that's great. I know that getting the equipment can be one of the biggest barriers. And if continuing this conversation next month is of interest to you, that's something that we can start talking about, because I feel like most likely by July, we'll have a better idea of where we're at in terms of our financial opportunities for what esports will look like in the future.
You could host an event for alumni to play with students as a fundraiser through the foundation, as a restricted gift towards intramurals and esports programming.
You're just full of ideas, buddy. We're going to talk.
I've consulted so I've worked for my fraternity after I graduated. So I went across 50 different schools consulting the chapters, but with them being nonprofits and foundation driven, I became very familiar with that business model. So we're partnering primarily only with the Department of Education, recreation departments, and doing a revenue share to foundations to kind of give back, because the infrastructure is extremely expensive. And considering, I mean, budgets are getting cut like crazy, the last thing that's going to be purchased is video games. So.
Absolutely. All right, well, it is 12:03 Pacific time here, so we are past our time for today, but thank you so much for attending and contributing to the conversation. And again, if you want to see this conversation continue in July as we start to get a better idea of what our next fiscal year budgets look like and opportunities available for fall, we are happy to do so. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Bye, everybody.